Hello and welcome to the install of OpenMediaVault for the Raspberry Pi 2, 3, and 3 Plus. And the reason this doesn't work on the original Raspberry Pi will be covered later, but just be aware that this actually works on the 2, 3, and 3 Plus. So not the original and 0 or any of those, and mostly because it runs Debian ARM that causes the problem. Actually, I guess I just covered it right now. Anyway, this will be the first time I've installed this, and it's the first time I've actually really played around with it. So we're going to be learning it together. So first, let's learn what it is. As by the description on the web page, which I'll put a link to in the description down below, OpenMediaVault is a next-generation NAS, network access storage solution, based on Debian Linux. So this isn't using Raspbian, this is actually using Debian in ARM format, so that works well for a lot of things. It has services like SSH, FTP, SMB media server, rsync, BitTorrent client. It's kind of a good way to do sharing across your network of files. So what I did previously was I ran OSMC as Kodi, and then for my personal media that I wanted to share, I ran a Raspberry Pi using Linux, Raspbian actually, with a LVM plugin to allow me to add big disks combined together using redundancy. And it was a little slow. And there were a lot of reasons why it was a little slow. But mostly because it was an older Raspberry Pi, because it was running a module that wasn't part of Raspbian to do what this actually does. So in today's world, what I could probably have done is have my media center using Kodi by my TV, and then downstairs I could have this running on a Raspberry Pi using much less power than an actual PC would use, or much more performance than running Raspbian with a bunch of LVM plugins in it. So we'll see how it works, but the features include running out of the box, which is what it should do, Debian Linux, web-based administration, easy system updates via Debian package management, volume management, smart support, link aggregation, Wake on LAN, IPv6, which is actually pretty important in a lot of ways, especially moving forward as we look to the future of the Internet protocol. Email notifications, those are always handy. File sharing, which is basically the entire purpose of this. So if it didn't do file sharing, I would be a little upset if it had a NAS that wouldn't share files. And it is extendable via plugins. Now that is another thing that convinced me that it was a pretty good thing to look at, and a lot of people may have been missing this, and this may actually be fairly useful to you in a lot of ways. So I have actually opened up several of the pages from the About separately so that we can look at them without having to flip around through the website. So here are some of the features. We're running Debian Linux, same thing, blah, blah, blah. User management, schedule jobs. So this is important because you can schedule tasks that do various things, move files around. Any cron job you could put together that would do things like that would probably work well like this. It'll announce itself. Plugin system. See if we're missing anything. Hard drive power management using APM or AAM. That's actually nice. It'll do GPT partitions, a lot of different file system supports, a bunch of different RAIDs. It'll do quotas, so you can actually assign quotas per volume. I don't know if it'll do quotas per user, but if you, say, took an external hard drive and set up a quota, say you were the head of a household and you had your mom, your dad, your brother, and your sister in there, and you were setting up the system, you could set up a big hard drive and assign each of them a certain file share space, I'm guessing, so that they could only work within that. So if you had a 8 terabyte hard drive, you could give 2 terabytes to each person, and that way nobody steps on anybody's toes, rather than just running the disk out, and you could keep the volume size underneath the actual physical size of the drive. It'll let you use Watchdog, Syslog, Smart to monitor it. I like that it allows read-only SNMP email notifications, which are great until the system's down, and then you don't get the email notification that it's down because it's down. Proactive processes and system state monitoring, and these are some of the services that it'll do. I like that it does NFS, SSH, FTP. Those are all great. SMB, awesome. All right, so now let's get into some of the plugins. So here are some of the plugins that are available. You can run Clam, which is pretty much the de facto light Linux antivirus, which is handy because if you've got people storing files on here, you definitely want to be able to scan those files for viruses when they're stored to make sure that nobody's cluttering up your file storage with viruses. And may not necessarily be such a big deal in Linux, but if you're opening these on a Windows box for whatever reason and you see a strange file out there, you definitely don't want to open something with a virus. So you having your NAS virus scan these puts it up in the league of some of the commercial actual NAS boxes with integrated CPUs that handle tasks and have apps on them that you can work with. So that's definitely cool. DAP media server, authentication via LDAP. And it's not required, but it's an option. LVM management. Now, having actual LVM management built into the system is awesome, rather than having it as a module that you slam into Raspbian, force it to work, and then have a lot of problems with it down the road. I didn't have a lot of problems with LVM, but I had a lot of problems with how it was added to Raspbian to get it to work that caused me issues, even though the LVM drives were secure and safe, and when the system crashed and lost the LVM setup, I was able to add it right back in. It's still annoying. Excuse me, I'm still having some problems with my voice from last month. It was still annoying that the LVM implementation for Raspbian did not work out as well as I'd hoped it would. So you can use NetAtalk for AFP file sharing, UPS tools, route management, AirPlay, and USB auto backup. Now, all of these plugins are stored on a site called omv-extras.org. So this is where some of these plugins are. So this is where the most current ones are. That's just the ones they listed on the website. This is actually what is out there. So you got OpenMediaVault, OpenVPN. You can do all different kinds of encryption, it looks like. Docker module. So there's a lot you can do, and these are just the latest ones. So there are apparently quite a few, and we are actually working with Arrakis, OMB4X Arrakis. I didn't want to go backwards. But you can see there's a backup, printing, a lot of different things you can look into for this that can give you a lot of help. Like here, this one would probably be great for denial of service. If you're happen to getting that, if you've got forward facing on the internet and a route to your box, if it sees malicious activity, too many password failures, seeking exploits, it'll ban the IP address. Not 100% effective because most people who do that can just generate a new IP address, but the more annoying you are to hack, the less likely somebody's going to be to really push it too hard. Typically, I mean, you know, there's always people who are going to want to get in, but if you make it hard, they're probably going to move on to somebody easier who doesn't have something that bans IP addresses for malicious activity. You could have a MySQL plugin, which is awesome because this would allow you with OSMC to put the SQL database on your media server and have everything running on Raspberry Pis, and that would be great. I just kind of wish that MySQL implementation of the database for OSMC was a little bit more robust. There's a Plex media server that you can add. That's kind of cool. Remote desktop, remote mount. And I'm sure there's going to be tons and tons more because it looks like these are updated fairly often and fairly recently. So you've got things you can do to help you. And if this sounds like, so if you're going to set up a NAS and this sounds like something you're interested in, you would definitely want to look at the plugins to kind of get an idea of what you want to set up as you're setting it up. Now here's some screenshots of it. And we're just going to flip through some of these and see if there's anything interesting and worth mentioning as we go through. So this is the basic menu, I'm guessing. Like I said, I have not installed this yet. We are learning about it together. I like this very clear smart information window that tells you what the error rates are, what the uptime, stop counts, seek error rates, and everything are. And I like that it gives you the threshold, value, and worst. And it tells you what state it's in. So that's pretty good. It tells you your physical drives right here. And then looking back on that previous one, you've got RAID management, so you can actually set up these physical drives in a RAID version and get them set up how you want to do them so that they're joined, so that they're backing each other up, so that there's redundancy, all of that information. And we are looking at system information, which gives you your typical Raspberry Pi CPU usage, memory usage. You see this a lot. Well, actually, this one's running on a PC. Looks like Intel Core 2 Quad CPU. But we're running on a Raspberry Pi, so it's going to look similar but be different. And here are the services that are running, I'm guessing, on the PC. Shared folders, that's always nice, and it's really easy to set them up as read-write, read-only, or no access. So that works out really well to give you some privilege ability with very easy, just click and go. And user and group permissions to tell what groups they're in, what users are in what groups, and to give them permission to folders. Gives you graphical system information so that you can see CPU usage and by day, by hour. A lot of statistics it looks like that you can see for performance. If you're getting slow performance, it should be pretty easy to go back in here, look through that previous section, and understand what's going on. And this is based on this screenshot, I'm guessing this is the web interface that we're looking at. And we're going to focus on the console more than anything. And these give you your system information, configuration, and options. Looks pretty Linuxy to me. So that works out pretty well. Basically takes you these sections and breaks them down into one little area. So that's pretty cool. And that is rights management per user, log files. Log files are good. You can scroll back through, look at what's going on, find out if you're having a problem, what the problem might be. And that is all the screenshots. So that gives us a little bit of an idea of what we're looking at. And in case we don't get the web client up, because it's actually going to be kind of hard for me to do both necessarily, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to record it at this point, since I have not actually set it up yet. So we'll have to see how that goes. But that's okay. It will come together as it does. And then they have a blog that tells you information that you need to know. It's pretty easy to read. And it tells us that February 2019, even though it doesn't really have a date on it, that version 4.1.19 is available. And it tells you what it fixes. And these have dates, it looks like. There's an update. Looks like it's updated fairly often, at least once a month. And you can go back through 127 pages of the blog and see what's going on. But it gives features and issues and things that people are looking to do at that point. I also found this information on the SourceForge download page that lists pretty easily, and there's the image that we got, what the default web interface password is and the default console password is. And for the sake of record, I will put this information down in the description so that it's pretty obvious. Make sure you change these if you set it up yourself, because obviously these are pretty public knowledge and easy to find, and this is the first thing somebody's going to try to get into your box if they notice what you're running. Anyway, I will link the download this page, and I will link the plugin page, and I will put this information in the description for you. So that should make it fairly easy. So we're going to take our image, OMV4 Raspberry Pi 2, 3, and 3 Plus .image. Oh yeah, and to cover what I was talking about before, where was it? Not based on Raspbian. but Debian, ARM, HF, only compatible with Raspberry Pi or Pi 2 or 3. So that's what the issue comes in that talks about why it's not compatible necessarily with the first version of the Raspberry Pi. And I really can't see where you would want to run a high-performance NAS on a box like that. You would probably need the processing power of the 2 with the memory to do buffers for file sharing and whatnot that the 2 has as a minimum. So that works pretty well. All right. So now we've covered everything we need to cover on the back end. Now let's move to the front end. We are going to take this OMV _4 Raspberry Pi _2 _3 plus image, and we're going to burn it to an SD card. Now, if you look in the description down below, I have already recorded videos on how to burn an image in Windows. I was going to do the Mac version, but I tried for hours yesterday, and my Mac is no longer capable of burning SD card images. I cannot get it to recognize the SD card. My slot's blown, and my USB ports, half of them don't work anymore. My Mac is very old. I do not have any intention of replacing it right now. It's not in the picture of things I want to do. I've got other projects that I need to finance, and that is not one of them that I need to move forward with. So in this cycle of Raspberry Pi videos, there will be no illustration on how to burn images on a Mac. I apologize for that, but I could not get it to work, and I cannot at this time get a new Mac to do that, and I don't have access to another one that actually will handle SD cards. Most of the other ones I have are way too old for that. So, for the next section, check the description on how to burn an image if you need help on doing that, and we are going to go straight to what it looks like on first boot right after this. So, give me a second to get that set up, and we will start the recording using my wonderful capture card. So here we are in the first boot of OpenMediaVault. It's doing its typical setup where it's going to do a first run, and then it's going to check for updates. I have this connected through a Cat6 cable to my local network because I'm not sure if we could set up Wi-Fi first. We'll find that out. Like I said, I'm doing this as you're doing this. So we're going to log in with what it says our console password is, which is root, and our password is OpenMediaVault. And we will change our password to hopefully I caught that because it went ahead and took it. Looks like I caught it. No, looks like I didn't. Looks like you cannot make the password password. Huh. Interesting. Oh, I'm putting in the wrong current password. That's why it keeps exiting out. Mostly because I can't type. Okay, I screwed that up. Okay, that's what you should see. All right. So, on your first boot, you're required to change the password. And to do that, you'll need to type in the current password, which is OpenMediaVault, and then select a new password twice. Since I'm typing on a, well, spare keyboard that's balanced on the edge of my chair, I typed it in wrong. My apologies for that. All right, so now we're getting some statistics here where it says, welcome to Armbian 5.46, experimental Debian. And now we rebooted, probably doing some updates. I did not catch what it said on the screen, so hopefully that's all it is. All right, let's go ahead and sign in. And this will be with our new one. All right, so this is sitting here, so let's do apt upgrade like it wants to pick up all the updates. Yeah, I want to continue. Why wouldn't I want to continue? I typed it in. Seriously, though, it's nice that it gives you the option not to in case you detect a problem. All right, so now we run some updates. It's downloading those updates. And this is why I was hesitant to try to set it up over Wi-Fi, mostly because we don't have a graphical user interface, at least not yet. I don't know if there is one for this. However, we don't have one. Let's do an update. Okay, so we are nothing in there. All right, so this is pretty much the installation. Looks like we had some exceptions during the upgrade. So let's go ahead and switch back to my other PC and see if we can get the web client to come up for the web interface. And that might give us a little bit more direction. So bear with me and we'll switch back over there. All right, so here we are back in the web client. I actually did an ifconfig to find the IP address, typed that in, went straight to the OpenMediaVault. It does identify itself on the web page as OpenMediaVault, so anyone who connects to it, if you do not change the password, will know what your password is. Did I type it wrong? Maybe I did. So that was a typo. Okay. So we've got certain services running. So let's go through some of these options and take a look at what we got. Our host name is Raspberry Pi, which we could also connect to. And I really wish we need to change that because I have so many devices that come up as default of Raspberry Pi that I have to change as soon as they come up because the next device will try to supersede that host name and we don't want that. May not be a problem for you, but when you have 9 Raspberry Pi devices in your house, sometimes it can get a little bit hairy. Alright, so we need FTP. We don't really need Apple filing, but we'll leave it on, and we will probably need not giving the option to start the service. It's just telling me whether it's enabled or running, but not giving me any control. So this looks to be informative rather than helpful. Alright, so let's go in here. So here is our settings for our web administration. This would be our password if we wanted to change it. And I definitely suggest you go here first, because that would be the best thing you could possibly do. Date and time. Works for me. network. This would be where you would change the host name, so we would change this to OMV4 RPI, and that takes it away from being called Raspberry Pi. And it looks like to save the changes, then you need to apply them, so that's pretty standard double configuration there. So there's our interfaces, different things we can add. This would be where we would add Wi-Fi, proxy server, service discovery. This is where now it's open and running, enabled. Firewall, if you want to install firewall, which I would suggest you do if you're internet facing. Okay, notifications. You can turn notifications on or off. Set your SMTP settings. Recipient, where it's sending it from, and the notifications that it sends for errors. Power management, you can specify whether to monitor the system status and select the most appropriate CPU level. Sounds like a pretty good setup. And then schedule jobs to handle monitoring, monitor system performance, and collect it periodically. And I don't think you need to make apply these changes after each one. We can probably switch and apply a few changes. But I would like to see if the data appears on the screen after we make the change. It does not seem to give us any more information. Certificates, if you need to generate an SSL or SSH certificate. Scheduled jobs. So this allows us to set a job on a certain time frame, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or at reboot. What time, what day of the month, what day of the week, what user it needs to be run as, the command that needs to be run, and to send an email if it finished or not. Very handy. Update management. So this is where we check for updates, and it will tell us if anything is out of date. So this saves us from having to go to the console to do apt update every time or app upgrade to get it all fixed up. Which is nice because I like to leave my Raspberry Pis pretty well out of reach, so I don't want to have to keep going and hooking monitors up to it to do this. So it's nice that it's integrated into the server itself. And as a NAS, you would definitely want to secure this, so this would go away when you set up your security certificate. Even if you self-signed it, you could set one up. We're not going to do that, but if you self-signed a certificate and then pushed it out to all your machines, you would actually be able to get here if you accepted the certificate as valid, and then it would secure the connection between your machine and that one. Would not prevent people from getting in if you don't change the password, but it would at least secure the data between your machine and the server. Okay, this takes some time. All right. Can't really bypass this. Can I load another session, maybe? Maybe it'll let me do that. And then it can continue in the background doing whatever it is it's doing, and we can move on. Yes. So it'll carry on, and we can do what we need to do. We'll just stay out of the update management section. Here's the plugins. These are the ones that are installed, and you can sort them however you like. And you can check for new ones, check for updates, I guess add them in. So these are the ones that are installed. These are not. So that's nice. It's an integrated system to actually show you what they are. They have fairly good descriptions after them as to what they do. You could go to that web page that I'm posting in the description to tell more information and user comments on them, I guess, but you can sort through them at your will, download what you need. And extras. This actually goes out and tells it where to look for the updates and where to look for everything on OMV extras. So here's our disks. We do not have any disks on here. So as you're looking, we just have this, which is our flash drive. If we were going to add a drive, which unfortunately I don't have a spare external USB hard drive to put in here right now, it would show up under here. Smart settings, we would enable smart. It could do a check. Power mode, it tells check the device unless it's in sleep mode. It sets what power mode to check or not check it in. So you can tell it when to check and when not to check. Temperature monitoring, this can be sometimes important if you've got something that's starting to have some questionable issues with temperatures, so it can monitor the temperature of the device if it has the correct sensor. RAID management, we would create a RAID, can select stripe, mirror, linear, 10, 5, 6, so you can do most of your common RAIDs there, adding in devices as you go. File system, this would be probably where you would generate a folder off of there to work with. Flash memory. I don't really know what this is for, but we'll continue on. Here's where that's not very well defined as to what it does. I mean, it tells you about how it needs to be changed manually and whatnot, but maybe this is to grow your disk out, but I'm not entirely sure. But flash memory makes me think it has something to do with the flash card. But anyway, user management. And there's no definition as to what it's doing, so that's what's throwing me there. And like I said, I am looking at this my first time, as probably most of you are, so we're learning this together. And that's why I'm going through every single menu option, so we can kind of see what it can do and maybe some areas it might shine. But I don't know much about this beyond what I'm seeing, so we are kind of learning this at the same time. So we would add a user. You can import them, I guess, if you've exported your user list. Name, comments, email, password, confirm password, set up their shell, set their groups, set their public key, pretty standard stuff. Groups you can define, which you probably want to work backwards, which is typical administration, as you'd want to probably define your shared folders, define your groups to assign to the shared folders, and then assign your users so they're assigned to the groups rather than do it backwards, because otherwise you'll be flipping back and forth between users and groups and shared folders, designing everything. So if you have the luxury of setting up your shared folders first, then you can define what groups have access to them and do everything in one shot. Then you can go back and assign the access to the shared folders, and then you can put the people in the groups in one shot rather than keep having to go back and forth to add a group, add a user to the group, add a group, add a user to the group, add a group. So rather than bounce back and forth, start at your highest level and work your way backwards. Services, Apple filing, which defines home directories for users. That's nice. And allow logins with passwords transmitted in the clear. Never really liked that option, so I usually would like to leave that off to stop that from transmitting clear text passwords if possible. May not be possible, so FTP, it's pretty standard stuff. Turn it on, port's already set, maximum number of clients that can come in, max connections per host, max login attempts before it disconnects. I usually set that a little higher, mostly because I can't type. Anonymous FTP, that's one you really want to be questionable about, especially if your device is accessible from the internet. In this scenario, I have this device firewalled off from accepting any incoming connections from anything other than the patch server on the internet. So I could turn this on and I could only connect from internal devices. So this would be safe for me. But if your device can in any way be reached by the internet, then turning this on will allow people access to the public folders of your device, and you may not want that. So be aware that can be a dangerous device, or dangerous setting. Permit root login. I would definitely leave that off once you define some users. Required valid shell. Yeah, definitely. One more security feature. Here you can do bandwidth restriction. I prefer to do bandwidth shaping on my router, so I don't really need this. And actually, internally, most devices can operate at their full potential because everything in my house is gigabit, so I'm pretty good there. Passive FTP. Just typical settings you would see. NFS, not necessarily as useful, but it's still nice that it supports it. rsync, SMB. Now here's an issue with SMB that may come up is with Windows 10, there's some SMB changes that came out. So you need to make sure you're on a very more current version of SMB. So that may cause some problems. You may get some error messages if you connect to this device through Windows. But turning it on, workgroup is workgroup. Description. Local master browser. So this sets this device as a master browser, so it announces itself. It can also be a time server, which is useful, especially if you want to cut down on the amount of outgoing bandwidth on your system. Being able to set one device as a time server and having everything communicate with that device, and then that device is the only device that transmits out to the time server to set time, can reduce your bandwidth slightly, but time server packets are really small, so it's not really going to help huge amounts. Enable home directories. You can enable Win support, which is pretty useful. Set your log levels. These are useful when getting it set up. You can set it to minimum, normal, full, and debug. So that's pretty cool. And then you got some extra options that are set already. So that works out pretty well. And your SSH logins. Leave root off because you don't want root logging in. Password authentication, public key authentication, TCP forwarding, compression. These are all options you would turn on if you knew you wanted to turn them on. Otherwise, you can leave them as they are by default. Now, of course, you need a user defined to log into this. If you have this checked off, you cannot log in as root if root is the only user. So you can't log into the system. So here's our dashboard. It's telling us what's going on. SMB is on. Apple filing is on. Did that ever finish? And it did finish eventually. I'm not going to bother updating this because I'm just going to flash this card again tomorrow, so not really much point in updating the server too much. We are fairly close to the current version, or we should be. Let's see if it'll give me a version number. I think the current version is 4.19 and we're 4.17. I didn't see too much visually that had changed from it, but that's okay. So we're using very little of our CPU, but we don't have actually anything shared, so that's good. We are using 8% of 976 megabytes. The rest is used by the system. As you can see, we've got typical things loaded. Here is our statistical performance data for our CPU. You can see it by hour, by day, by week, by month, and by year. I like how chronological it is, and I like how much it tracks over time. Now I'm guessing if we can't click these and turn them off. So this operates more like a picture than anything. Can't zoom it, can't do anything with it. Alright, disk usage. So this tells how much disk usage, same schema for date, load average. That would be updating and discovering things is pushing the load up a little bit. Memory usage, we're pretty much doing pretty good there. There's our network interfaces, and we're not getting anything for this. Maybe because we haven't defined them. Alright, Let's look at our log files. Here's our log files. We're probably going to see some errors in here because I haven't actually configured it completely. But I don't see too many. So out of the box, it seems like it runs pretty good. We've got 53 pages of logs already. Services that are running. And even though SMB's running, it's not enabled right now. Neither is Apple Filing because we don't have valid configuration information. Here is the place where you can donate via PayPal for the project. I have no association with this project, but definitely can donate there. And then here are the links in case in the future you need to go there and see what's going on with the project. And the About page. So I guess this project has been around for about 9 years now, which is kind of nice. It's new to me, and it's all about learning new projects and what's going on. And this would be OpenMediaVault version 4 to show you the basics. Now, as far as the rest of it, if you get this far, this is pretty much what any NAS is going to look like. I really didn't see that much information on the console that's going to help you out. So once you get it up and running, connect it to the web and do most of the configuration. Unless you like doing things through CFG files and configuring at the surface level and rebooting, if you do, that's cool. But when they provide you with a perfectly good web interface that will cut down on some mistakes for some people, that's the way I'd go. So like I said, you got your plugins and your extras and your updates up here. That's where you want to start. Define your folders, your groups, and your, well, actually set up your disks, set up your RAID, make your file systems, shared folders, groups, users, services that you want to share things on, and then rock and roll, you're all done. That's pretty much it. And that will get you going in the basics. More specific level, you can go at the menu option level to see what's going on in what particular function, and you should be good to go. I would say this is a much more robust setup than what I had running Raspbian with LVM, mostly because LVM is already built into this kernel, and LVM is not built into the Raspbian kernel, so I had to actually recompile the kernel and jam LVM support into it, and it really didn't like that. So if you're running Raspberry Pi as a Media Vault, or you want to run a Raspberry Pi as a Vault, that would be how I would do it, using this software. If I was going to use it as a media setup, I would run this to store my media, and then I would have another Raspberry Pi running to run actual Kodi. This particular piece of software for performance evaluation information, so you know what it would look like on yours comparative to what it's on mine, is running on a Raspberry 3 Plus. So that should tell you kind of where you fit into the scenario as to what kind of performance you should expect. This is not going to be a very fast NAS, but it should be fast enough to transmit data, especially to Kodi, to stream things, or as a NAS for a small office if you're going to do file sharing. LVM is pretty robust about how it sets up redundancy on drives, and if you're running RAID 5, you're always running RAID 5 regardless of what you're running it on. It uses that much redundancy, so it's going to be RAID 5. So if you need a redundant setup, you can set it up as a RAID 5 or RAID 10, just like you could any other Linux server. This one just runs without all the thousands of watts of power required. So if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. However, there is a forum for this that I would definitely recommend you check out first. I'm happy to try to find solutions for you, but I'm just checking this out. I don't really have a space or need for a Media Vault, so I will probably not continue running this myself. However, if I do have any intention in the future of setting one up, this is the route that I'm going to use. But like I said, if you have questions, I'll direct you to the forum listed in the website to talk to other people who are currently using it, because as much as they update this, by the time you're watching this video, it's probably a newer version, which may change functions that are affecting what you have, and I will not be as familiar with those for sure as the people who are currently running it. So again, thanks for watching, and thanks for exploring different operating systems with me for the Raspberry Pi. And let's see what else is out there. I've got a bunch more. That's probably a timeout from updates or something. Anyway, more my fault than anything. I don't think it's the software's fault. Probably because I haven't typed anything in so long. Anyway, we will continue this series. I've got probably 12 other operating systems or operating likes to install. So we're going to make some more videos on that. We're going to make some more videos on what those are like and how they look like when they install, and some things that may assist you in configuring them, and the configuration options that you can get to with them. So thanks for bearing with me in my crackly voice. I have been more trouble today than I've had in a little bit of time, but I still feel better, just a little bit coughing a lot today, but that's okay. It's probably just the weather change. I had to go out this morning. So anyway, once again, I apologize for not being able to do the Mac OS image burn because my Mac failed me, and someday soon, hopefully I get another Mac, so by the next time I do the series like this, I'll be able to incorporate how to burn in Mac OS, but unfortunately I don't have the availability to use a Mac that can access an SD card at this time. So thanks for watching. I've got to put all this together and get it out to you. Look forward to the next one, and enjoy your Raspberry Pi. See you guys later.